You just put me on. Right. I wasn't ready.
Oh, it's gonna hit.
She's like, you haven't heard anything yet. You guys thought you knew a Tribe Called Quest? All right.
You gotta feel it.
I like this. I think we're live. I feel like we're live right now. Look at Gerald back there dancing.
He's gotta go on.
It's Friday and we're live. Welcome to the Free Think Zone on this beautiful Friday day. It's your girl Shay J on the Brother Jeff Network. Thank you for joining today. Do me a favor. Share this out right now on your network. Make sure we're supporting independent black media. I need you to share this out. I need you to like, share, stay engaged. It's important that we make things like this go viral. And since you're tuned in, go to brotherjeff.com. Make any amount of donation because we are powered by the people. So people, you know the best nation. Donation. Do your job. Let's go. Today I'm super excited. I am so excited. Now, if you heard that music to start us off, that's the way we had to set the vibes because my special guest today needed a little bit of vibe setting. That was a Tribe Called Red. So if you're looking for something else to get you in the mood and get you going, check out a Tribe Called Red on YouTube. Today, for my special guest, what really reminds me before I introduce her, one of my favorite quotes by Nelson Mandela really rings true. Education is a powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And this really, I think, sets the stage for who we're speaking with today. A Native American woman, proud member of the Klamath tribe, she was a part of the federal lawsuit Burns versus Hickenlooper that helped bring marriage equality to Colorado in 2014. She's a proud principal of Northeast Early College, known to hold bold opinions and really go after the public education and policy. She looks at the structural aspects of racism prevalent in the American school system. She also looks at what's going on in the Denver public school system. Her tribal name is Strong Medicine Woman. She is the one and only principal of Northeast Early College, Stacey Parrish. Welcome.
That was, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I'm excited about this conversation for so many different layers. One, because your leadership as a woman of color, has been phenomenal. And I've been really just watching that. I've been blessed to be able to cross paths in this last year with you, with your school being Northeast Early College. I get to come in. The first time I think we crossed paths is I came and spoke at your school. Mm-hmm. And to have a principal that was so welcoming and in the midst of where people were really taking down the Black History programs, they weren't focusing on that. They weren't letting their students have a voice. You put on an entire program for us and brought myself, Tay Anderson, Coach Ian from Struggle of Love. Shout out Struggle of Love. And shout out Tay Anderson. I see you making headlines with Hillary Clinton. And so you brought us in and allowed us to speak to your school. And then after that, being able to develop mentorship programs with your students. I have 3 students that I work with, from internships to mentoring. And it's just been great to cross those paths. And of course, we have a mutual friend. Shout out to Shannon Hoffman. And she's actually in the building today. Shannon's in the building, y'all. And so shout out to Hope Tank. And it's been beautiful just watching us cross paths, but watching you be authentic in your space and outside of your space. And that's, for me, held true to one reason why I really wanted to sit down with you. I've been watching you, and I've been very impressed with you not backing down, having some hard conversations, and some people even coming after you for some things. And I'm excited because this conversation, I'm sure, is going to shake a couple feathers. So let me hit you with the trigger alert. This is a show that triggers people because you have entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of views, tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. Boom, boom, boom. Thank you. I don't have my cheat sheet anymore, so it makes me kind of sad. But I've been triggering you guys for a couple years now, so you know what it is. Trigger alert, trigger alert, trigger alert. All right, Stacey. As we jump in there, and I just want to kind of I want to open it up with one of your very own quotes, and I'm going to quote you on this. I'm a disruptor, and not only a push for change that will impact my schools and my campus, but also every living being in it. But I consider it a moral imperative to actively challenge the persistent institutional and structural aspect of racism prevalent in the American school system and in Denver public schools. And so with that, I just want to kind of go in as we talk about this semester, the up-and-coming challenges, the pandemic that we're in, COVID-19, our students being killed. There's so many different things that we're going to cover. But just starting out in what I love most is what I seen in fall semester. You went to the what are they called? The board. You went to the board and you challenged them on curriculum. And you really said that there needs to be curriculum that represented culture. And there needs to be curriculum that, especially the curriculum over colonization and what that looked like. And then, you being great friends with Ms. Grayson at MLK, that also brought the conversation up, hey, we need curriculum that looks like our black students. Where is this curriculum at? Tell me a little bit about DPS's cultural responsibility and why you feel like that was a need to bring that conversation in and kind of how that worked after that.
Well, I've never felt good about the pace in which people address issues that leaders and students and teachers bring forward in education.
Yeah.
That has never set right with me. You bring an issue forward and people hear and they empathize, and then they do that style of, then I'm going to summarize what you say. And it's like they're checking off this box of communication. But then they tell you that they will have a focus group. And then I need to talk to so-and-so in this department and see what they think. And that speed in which we have to address legitimate things that are coming up, that our teachers have in their hands, that students have before them, when they are not being changed in the moment, on the spot, and when people aren't saying, this is a problem, I'm with you, I'll fix it.
Yeah.
That is when I have to elevate my voice, because I do have that responsibility as a leader. I do have that responsibility as a leader of color. I do have that responsibility as a leader in Montbello, that when people are not listening to our concerns, then I will bring those issues forward with board comment. And the issues with the Native American curriculum, and the social studies curriculum in middle school, that was brought forth, years ago.
Right.
And at the time, it was received the same way it was before, which it was my issue and it was my concern, and tell me more about how you read it, instead of the individuals who put this forth actually discovering that for themselves.
Yes.
And that's why, Kim Grayson, her beautiful black students, that's why they have to come forward. That's why I have to come forward and speak out and speak up, or I don't know if change will happen.
I think you hit on so many things and looking at change happening. And what I hear, too, a lot of this conversation, and I know Tay Anderson's been a big champion of what does curriculum look like? How do we become included in that curriculum? How can we make sure our kids don't learn about black people starting that slavery as if that's all that they have to learn? And what does that look like? In that conversation, as it's starting to move forward, do you feel like they're able to kind of quiet this down and blame, it's because of COVID that we're responding to COVID right now? Is that being translated in that movement? Are they using COVID as a cover-up not to do the work?
I think COVID's being used as a scapegoat for a lot of progress.
Yeah.
And that's just unacceptable. Even the alleged edits to the U.S. history curriculum specifically, even those edits that I was made privy to in May, were still equally as appalling as the original manner in which it was written.
Wow.
And when I have an amazing educator at my school who was on that and is on that committee.
Yeah.
And when she speaks up about it and voices her concern about why is this still in here? Why is this still the edit? And when those conversations are met with, we're on a deadline, we have to make a decision, this is how it has to be, it still goes back to the fundamental issue that people don't get it who are supposed to get it.
Right. That's
You
huge.
should read through some of those edits, and I even talked to the board president to see if she had even read through those edits so that it is more culturally responsive. And if you're just listening, I am using air quotes because they are still, they're still asking the wrong questions. When they ask, when the topic is Reconstruction, and they ask the question, can the country survive a breakup?
Right.
I'm fairly certain we're asking the wrong question. And those edits are still in the curriculum, as we live and breathe right now. And I don't know, I'm still looking for leadership to just say, I will take this on, I will do an indictment of our curriculum, I will make sure my team is empowered with anti-racist frameworks, and we will adopt language that we can all use to assess anything. We're still waiting for that.
Wow.
We've moved beyond, I'm so glad we've committed to changing it. We need to say, show me the changes right now.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the changes right now.
That's good. Brother Jeff.
Wow. I mean, just listening to everything you have to say, Stacey, can you talk about your kind of background and how you were able to arrive as a principal within DPS? And it seems as though the Native voice is erased, not only in curriculum, but, within this country, and with all of the social uprest that we see happening across a lot of issues. We do see some Native American issues being highlighted, but I don't believe nearly enough. So just kind of how did you arrive to where you're at now in terms of education, and then, perhaps the Native perspective and landscape within DPS?
Wow. I arrived where I am sitting today because I have always been a part of school communities that say, go do it and we've got you. And you can do it and we've got you. And say it and we've got you. And I've always, and I feel like I've been blessed in that way because that isn't always someone's experience. What first launched me on this journey is I remember at the University of Oklahoma, where I got my bachelor's degree. I remember I had a professor tell me that and this was like my ethnic studies in education professor.
Right.
I use air quotes again. Because she told me the problem with me is that I think I can make a difference.
Whoa.
And this was when I was unpacking this really gnarly field experience that I was a part of at Douglas High School in Oklahoma City, where it was the first time I had been in a school that will be considered an urban school. I'm sorry, I'll just check me on my air quotes.
No, you're doing good.
Rock them air quotes. You're on the east
good.
side. We know about
We know about the air quotes.
Okay, I will embrace the air quotes.
Embrace them air quotes. Embrace them air quotes.
Okay, I'm there now. I am in the free think zone.
Yeah, you're in the free things zone. Remember that. You're good.
I remember trying to get to the school.
Yeah.
And this is, I was using like a map from a phone book because I'm getting old, That's how I was trying to find the school. And I got lost in Oklahoma City trying to find the school in like my old Ford Thunderbird. And I remember pulling over in a parking lot, and there was like the shell of a car because like a car had been set on fire, and it was like broken bottles and all of this stuff. And I remember seeing a payphone, and it was on Martin Luther King Avenue in Oklahoma City. And I remember, finding a payphone and calling the secretary of the school. And I was horrified because I was late.
Right.
And I was describing to her where I was. I was like, I'm near this blonde brick building. I'm near a burnt car. I'm in this like lot where I see like a bunch of, overgrown grass and weeds, and like, what in the heck? Like, where am I? I'm lost.
I'm scared.
And she said,
"You're here."
"Oh, honey, you're just in the student parking lot."
Oh, I knew it.
Oh.
She's like, "Get back in your car, drive around the back, and we'll buzz you in."
Oh, wow.
And that was my first experience of walking into a school, and I'm a bright-eyed undergrad,
Right.
and everyone I encountered was just like oblivious
Yeah.
to everything. And that was when I was like, my heart is here. Like, I am here. I will be here. I will stay here. And I got my shot at teaching English. I hope some of my old students are tuning in. Teaching English in 107B in Kansas City, Kansas. And that was my shot in never shying away from who I was. They're like, "You're crazy, miss. But we got you." And I just had this beautiful journey of everyone just being like, "You can do it. Keep talking. Keep saying it." And I was just given this great social and institutional permission just to keep being me.
I love that.
And so I was an English teacher before moving to Colorado, and I got I started out at Westminster High School.
Okay.
That was a pretty radical journey. And then I got into DPS at North High School as an assistant principal. So I have a lot of loyalties over there to the north side as well. Before I was tapped to take on, it was then called High Tech Early College, but Northeast Early College. And I feel like as an Indigenous leader in America today, we are on Arapaho and Cheyenne land.
Whoa, say
Come on,
that
tell
one more
them.
time.
We
Say that
are
one more
on
time.
Arapaho and Cheyenne land. And if you drive 3 hours east, you can go to the site of the Sand Creek Massacre, where 500 women and children were attacked by the U.S. Army before the Treaty of 1864.
Wow.
And you can walk where the blood stained Sand Creek. And we have streets, we have breweries in Denver who are named after individuals who were our Denver leaders, who literally paraded their horses through the streets of Denver with mutilated parts of Native women. And you have to let that sit with you.
Wow.
This land that we walk on is Indigenous land, and there is no one that I want to be but myself in it. I don't know who else I can be, but be this leader walking the earth in this way so that I can honor my ancestors, honor my tribe, be that voice for Native youth, because it's hard being a Native leader in Trump's America. And so
Now that's real.
How does Trump's America, we know how Trump's America impacts, immigrants, et cetera. You can't call Native people immigrants. You know what I mean? It's really hard to even fix someone's mind around saying, the indigenous people came here and colonized or took or whatever. So we see, Trump's America as it impacts everyone. But how specifically do those policies impact the Native community?
Excellent question.
Oh, man. Free Think Zone. Okay.
Free Think Zone, powered by the people.
So I'll speak really concretely from my people.
Absolutely.
So in the state of Oregon, and well, we live with it every single day in Colorado, which is fracking, and the impacts of fracking on our air quality, on our waterways, on our lopsided economy that just keeps feeding the fossil fuel industry at the expense of our entire economy.
Right.
And of our working class economy, I will say. And fracking is, sprinkling into all other states. And when I think about my home state of Oregon, I think about the proposed Jordan Cove liquefied natural gas terminal that would be built in Coos Bay. Which would clear cut hundreds of miles of forests, which would desecrate tribal burial sites and sacred sites, which would crisscross across hundreds of fresh waterways where our salmon swim from the ocean up the rivers. Like, people in Oregon are salmon people. We are fish people. My tribe has a saying in that when the fish die, we die.
Yeah.
And
deep.
so when the people of Oregon keep fighting together in a decades-long battle to say no to this proposed terminal, which would frack our entire state and which would export this liquefied natural gas to China, we have to stand up constantly because the president has ultimate authority to override all of this and say, make it happen. That is like our dependence on oil, which is like another episode.
Yeah, I think it's good.
But when you want to know what like we have to do, like we literally have to put our bodies across our rivers and our sacred sites, because Trump sees it as job creation and Trump sees it as feeding into the economy, and that is just that colonial mindset that we are fighting in education these days too, and it's the mindset that just has to go.
That colonial thought process. Stacey, you're hitting on so many things, and like you said, we might have to have a part B and C, right, and D too, because that's when it gets real. And by the way, we're powered by the people. So if you haven't went to brotherjeff.com, here's your chance. This is how we have these type of liberated conversations. And when we talk about that colonial thought process and what that looks like, and we talk, one of the things I know when you're bringing everybody back to school and you start saying, okay, this is what we're doing. One of your things was equity work only grows during a global pandemic. When we talk about that equity work, when we talk about this remote learning, the disparities, the inequalities, can you speak a little bit to this assumption that students have this access, that all students have computer access, all students, get food and fed and all these things? Can you talk a little bit to those disparities and what that looks like right now and what you really deal with as a principal?
I need to be real right now. We cannot go back to school because of this pandemic, period. We can have these thoughts of the importance of school and how much our children need us and need us to be physically there with them, touching them, loving them, seeing them, laughing with them, all of those things. Like, we can have that thought that we know our purpose and that we know our babies need to come back to us.
Yeah.
While simultaneously fearing for our lives, their lives, the lives of our family. And I feel like this conversation is always like, you have to choose your side. You either love the kids or, or we gotta go back to school.
Yeah.
Or you gotta love the kids or we gotta stay out of school. And it's the same conversation.
I like that.
We do have profound issues with access.
Yeah.
Like why wireless is not just a utility that is universal. I mean, colonialism.
Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We need one of those colonialism jars where we drop something in every time we attribute something to colonialism.
We will be rich.
Like wireless needs to be a utility.
Yeah.
The fact that it took a pandemic, for DPS to sit up and actually be like, how much technology do we have in our schools? Like, and they put on their glasses and they like pulled up a spreadsheet. Like the fact that we had to ask that question and then panic about it and then actually fund one-to-one appropriate technology for kids like ish in the spring is also like not okay.
Yeah. That's good.
And so like one-to-one technology is the expectation. Like we buy pencils, we have to buy Chromebooks, and we have to find out how to do it, like, period.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I just had to say that because there are still some kids who have their technology from last year, and it's like busted old technology where you can't run all the apps, and that's the fault of DPS. And so when we talk about access, we have to go like, well, why? Why isn't there access? Well, what's within our locus of control right now? And you keep stripping it away. And it just goes back to like funding priorities because we can definitely help that opportunity gap.
Absolutely.
And we can get ahead of it. So they're just, okay, that's not even a question whether or not that's going to be a gap because we've handled it.
Yeah.
But we're still not even there. So like opportunity and access is a real thing for our kids when we talk about remote learning.
It's an absolute thing. And something you just hit is funding. And so when I'm looking at funding, I'm looking at how things, and Brother Jeff is obviously far more versed in this area. But when I'm looking at the funding and I'm seeing that we have employees in DPS that are hitting, 9,000 and above that have absolutely no contact with our youth, how does this conversation sit with DPS, and how do they sit around the table and say this is okay? And then we have students that don't even have access, can't eat, don't have internet, so this remote learning doesn't make sense. But how do we have these top heads that don't even have any access with our children that are making this type of income?
I mean, everyone always says that the further, like once you get out of a school, once you're not working in a school, you kind of forget what it looks like to look at your kids and to know your kids and to like know the struggle and to know like the hope and the dreams every day. Yeah. Like you get further removed and you forget how it was.
Absolutely.
I think like that's something that's real. But I also think like because of colonialism, we have this hierarchical structure where the voices at the bottom, our students, our teachers, our lowly school leaders, where our voice isn't the most important voice. And so when you think about the function of education and it being how we develop our democracy and how we develop authentic community, and when community's voice isn't the first voice, but it's this hierarchical structure of decision making, and we have a problem, and we also have an opportunity to shift that right now in DPS.
That's good.
Going straight to the Free Think Zone and some comments. Dr. Darlene Sampson says, please ask why black educators have left your building, citing racism, and black parents have complained about disrespectful treatment. And Shanice Young chimes in on Dr. Sampson's comment and says, I agree, black student treatment as well.
I love reading the comments. I know where the origination of the comment about staff comes from. When I took over my principalship at Northeast Early College, then known as High Tech Early College, I inherited a building that leadership had left in disarray, and the books had been cooked. And so it looked like we had a whole lot of students in our school.
Okay.
And we did not. They had dropped out. They had gone away the year before I became principal there. And they were left on the rosters of our school. So it looked like we had a very large student population. And then as a new principal, I came and I was like, where are all the children? And then we start finding out where these children are, and they had been permitted to drop out the year before, and no one intervened, and they remained on the books. And so I had a budget deficit. I had to cut 14 positions in my building.
Wow.
And cutting 14 positions in the building anyway rips out the soul of your school.
Absolutely.
Because those are people, those are mortgages, those are loved ones, those are individuals who are there for our kids. And what was really difficult about the 14 positions that we cut are all of that comes with really hard decisions. And when we had to prioritize funding our core classes, it meant that we lost very dear to us support staff who were in those positions that we could no longer afford. And those were support staff who had really grinded year after year to be there for our kids. And because of just the drastic budget cuts that we had to make, it was $250,000. It was almost $500,000 of budget cuts that I had to make as a first-year principal. Unfortunately, we lost staff of color in those budget cuts.
Well, Ann Cardia, she says, damn, where is she a principal? I wouldn't mind working for her.
What you do, let's talk.
Right, she's like at Northeast Early College if you're looking for a position. And I think that's real, and I think so many times, and this is why I think we need to have more of these community forums and community conversations where parents are led in, communities led in, conversations are being brought here to the Brother Jeff Network, because so many times we don't know what's going on, and all you see is people being left without jobs, students being left without resources, things of this sort, and then we're saying who's making these decisions, because we see who it's affecting, but we don't know how these decisions are being made, if they came in your term or after your term. So I think it's very important that we have those conversations.
Shay J, we got to send a shout out to our crew from Colorado, 1,000 miles for Breonna Taylor.
Yes,
they have left about now. They should be right now in Louisville, Kentucky, just showing up, showing out, and we will bring an update in terms of how that trip is going. A shout out to 1,000 miles for Breonna Taylor.
No justice,
and I see some sweetgrass on the.
What's this about?
What's up with tell us about the sweetgrass and the sage, and just break it down for us, Stacy.
So you can't just walk into a place empty-handed. That's not the way. And so I had to bring you all gifts.
Grab them so these folks can see what's up. People. Yeah.
And so I grow my own sweetgrass in my yard, and I also grow my own sage. And so this was from my last harvest, and so I bundled some up for you. Ooh, you get a whiff from the fan.
Yes, I love.
It's just like medicine,
right?
Ancestral medicine.
You're with me because every morning I'm saging and I'm doing all these things. So this is right in my, and he's Palo Santos and saging 24/7. So this is great.
So I brought some for the both of you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. You're amazing
much
for that. I do want to talk about this. I have a question about. And some people, I see you guys chiming in and tuning in. We have a watch party going on over here. We have so many different watch parties. City Council, they want to talk about the public comment that you made about the removal of RSO, and kind of going into that. I don't think that you were ever allowed that space to really talk about what that public comment was with removing the resource officers and what that was. So if you could just talk a little bit about that comment and what that was and how the anti-racism plays into that.
Yes. That board comment went over like a lead balloon with some DPS leaders, but sometimes I like those balloons. So my board comment specifically spoke out against what the real issue is in our district, at our district level within our own policy.
Okay.
we all, as leaders in Denver Public Schools, and you all at home, should go out, to the internet if you don't even have it already. If you don't have it up already, look up Board Policy JKR and look up Board Policy the Discipline Matrix for JKR, which outlines what the Board of Education has said we should do in response to behavior and discipline incidents that happen at our school. And within that board policy, it clearly outlines when to contact law enforcement, when it's mandatory, when it is optional, and then when to deploy restorative approach and restorative practice.
Okay.
And when you start looking at that document in an anti-racist lens, and you couple your analysis of the discipline matrix, and then you also look at the discipline data in Denver Public Schools, and let's say, for instance, one of our highest incidents across all schools is being under the influence or in possession of drugs, mostly marijuana.
Okay.
And when you look at what the JKR response is, according to board policy, it is optional in it's you can look at when you are required then to contact law enforcement, and you can look at when you are required to then kick it back to the school level to deploy resources.
Okay.
So to use this and this alone as a case study, what we have been screaming for and what my board comment got to is that when we have been screaming, begging, shouting, emailing, board commenting for years on universal drug treatment, universal substance abuse counseling as a standard in Denver Public Schools, so that it's not follow the matrix, call the police.
Right.
When we have been saying, like, this is a problem we see with our youth, we need to get to the why are they using, how can we help them, how can we get to the root cause, how can we teach them to overcome, how can we help teach them to really cope. When we have been yelling and saying, like, why can't we have a universal referral program for all, instead of constantly kicking us back to schools who are already underfunded and overtaxed, of like, well, find what works, develop partnerships. They don't realize that piecemeal approach is not the universal approach that we need to help our youth to do this work.
Yeah.
And their families and our schools. And I have a problem when the conversation is around mass policing of our schools and not an indictment of the board policy that puts the police and the police response in our schools.
Yeah.
I was also very appalled that, and I don't know what people know about what social workers, really do in Denver Public Schools.
Let them know what they really do.
Our social workers are overworked.
I'm sure.
Overworked. I don't know how many other districts do this, but in Denver Public Schools, they require social workers to tackle the truancy work of the school.
Wow.
And they require social workers to file court documents on truant children.
Whoa.
Do you think any social worker who is there for kids in crisis, there for their families in crisis, there in their darkest hours when they're doing threat assessments, suicide risk reviews, when they're just doing daily walk-ins of trauma and response, do you think our social workers in Denver Public Schools want to write a court summons on truancy on the family they've been treating?
Now, hold on. I want to just back that up, because when we start talking about this school to prison pipeline, and now you're talking about social workers that are doing law enforcement work. When I'm writing police reports, that's a function of law enforcement. And this is where we start talking about cops in schools as opposed to counselors and overworked social workers, etc. Am I hearing you correctly that there are those who are filing direct reports to the courts
that are supposed to be helping our families
from the schools?
Yes, but let me be clear, they don't want to do that work.
Right.
because that is fundamentally messed up to do that work. So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline and everyone is talking and painting these images that our police are stalking our hallways without my authority, that's not going to happen in my school or any other school, or just blindly arresting children, that's not going to happen in my school. Like that doesn't happen. When people are trying to rally our immediate Denver public schools, but are not talking about JKR, but are not talking about the role of social workers in Denver public schools, and about how none of them want to write court truancy summons and get kids on the docket, like the very kids they have been responding to in trauma, but no one is bringing that up. But instead, we are romanticizing the role of the social worker. We want to talk about, we need more social workers, and no one's not going to be like, go get it.
Right, because it sounds good. It sounds great.
No one is in disagreement of that. Please give me like 4 more social workers. So if anyone's there, like, give me 4 more social workers. But also, let's get real about what policy says about what Denver Public Schools is asking social workers to do.
Wow.
In the filing of truancy. Because we don't want them to do it.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do it. But when you talk about the school to prison pipeline and you're also like, hooray, now we're going to shift the funds and we're going to fund more social workers, not in the current system in Denver public schools.
Attack the system. You're bringing up the huge system.
Colonialism. Just bling, bling.
Colonialism. We hit that jackpot again. When you're talking about JKR as a policy, and this is the problem. I think we get so caught up in the emotion. They've learned how to rally us around emotion. So we have a lot of people that are just, like, okay. But then when we have people like you that we sit down and we have the conversation, we're able to unpack it. These are the community conversations that I feel like need to be brought forward. These are things that we should be sitting in the room for. These are the policies that people need to be writing in and saying, hey, we have to change the policy. And if anybody knows, that's my biggest thing. Change the policy. Everything else around it, like you said, we romanticize different roles and we cheer in things that we don't understand the full complexity of what it really is. And I mean, you've hit something really huge about the policies that are in our school, and who listens to this and who's responsible for something like a JKR policy.
That is board policy.
Boom.
So let's not, like what you said. What did you say earlier where I was excited? You said something about emotion. What did you say?
They learn how to play off our emotions. They play off our emotions. They play off of those things.
I feel like
it's been a thing.
Especially now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We are living in the summer of massive protests over the murder of George Floyd.
Right.
And Elijah McClain.
And yes. We need to be talking about the real issues now that white people are finally getting woke around this and finding their voice and using their bodies to stand in front of us.
Right.
Like, we are through saying these romantic notions of, school to prison pipeline. Hooray, we will end it. Not if, like, we go back, and like flip open, our how we do work. And like, there is the root cause. Like, we are behind romantic notions of how to solve educational problems. Like, if we're going to fight colonialism, we might as well do it their way and like write a policy that they can put in
fight them with their own work
to really address it. Like, we don't have time to talk about romanticized things. We got to talk about like the real things.
But you dropped something on me today. Because we had a big discussion about how the school board voted to take police officers out of school, but then in the very next moment, we're learning that it's the board policy that allows social workers to engage families in the criminal justice system.
Brother Jeff,
and you said that is a board policy.
As a best practice.
Wow.
We
got some explaining to do.
So, like, please commit here and now that when anyone is like, bring on more counselors, bring on more social workers, be like, what do they do exactly as written Can you give me the trainings in which they have been trained? Can you show me the curriculum they use? Like, we need to do that examination. Otherwise, we are just like running and like, I'm going to wave my sign and I'm going to be with you on the streets. But like, tell me what it really looks like in schools. And then, like, go talk to a counselor, and then they'll tell you what it really looks like in schools. Or talk to a social worker, and they'll tell you what it really looks like in schools.
In the free thing zone.
But what makes me nervous, and this is what made me nervous when I saw you speaking to the school board around curriculum. Denver Public Schools, which I call Don't Plan to Stay If You're Black, has a tradition. And indigenous. See, I can now we can add that.
There we go.
But they have a history of retaliation. Like what you're saying can be used to improve a system, which any system that wants to improve and wants to hear the voice and wants to see what's happening on the ground, they celebrate it, they embrace it, and then they change, and then they attract greater talent. DPS has a history of retaliating against voices like yours. And that's what made me nervous when I saw you speaking to the school board. Do you ever get weary in terms of the work that you're doing that you know needs to be done, and the climate of retaliation that may miss you or may not? What is your message to school leadership and the school board as it relates to these types of voices and issues coming forward and having a space to come forward without retaliation?
That's really good.
Retaliation in Denver Public Schools is real. We show up, sometimes we like show up in the summer and we're like, who did we lose? Sometimes we show up to a meeting after some stuff has went down and we're like, who did we lose?
Right.
And of course we're weary. Like, of course we are tired. Of course, like, why does it have to be the leaders of color constantly speaking up and out on these issues?
Right.
I need my white leaders in DPS to also speak up and out. And there was a time in my life, and I really hope my wife isn't watching this at school. Just
shout out,
or at home.
Bree.
Just turn it away. Move our child away from the laptop. Like there was a time when I was like, oh, my job, or like my career, and then there was a time on my own leadership journey where I was like, if I have to be anyone else, and if I have to be controlled by another institution, then I, hoka hey, like it's a good day to die,
Wow.
And
that part.
And I'm there. Like that's the only type of leadership we need right now is authentic and bold at the expense of our own selves, because we will land in a better place.
Yeah.
And I cannot be anyone but myself. My dad knows that. My wife knows that. My staff know that. And so it goes back to like, hoka hey, it's a good day to die.
Man, you're putting in the work, and you're not only putting in the work for you, but for a community. And I love, like you said, you're doing it authentically. And as I'm looking at this, I know you guys are slated to open up school August 24th. A lot of that's remote. How much guidance is DPS providing, and what that looks like to operate your schools during this time? How much is that really guided and really, structured?
Oh, it's
okay.
I think about to all my school leaders out there who engaged in work all last week early, only to have on Friday drop that we were remote. Like, I'm with you when you cry. I'm with you when you're like, I quit. Like, it is a mess.
Oh.
Like, it is hard to make sense of, there's always like the plan on paper, right? Like, well, last week the plan was, families have the choice, remote or in person. Mm-hmm. And if they're in person, they do the 4 cohorts, right? You can only mingle with 4 cohorts in a high school. When you start, like, I wish I had like a one of those boards,
a little chalkboard to make us a
where I can just
visual.
be like, let me tell you what it looks like. Like, if you take like my school, 566 kids, and if you guess like 40% of them are going to learn remotely,
right?
Those 40%, we have to figure out like how they're going to learn remotely, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have to take everyone else and figure out how they're going to learn in person.
Okay.
At 4 different grade levels. When like we offer 9 different English classes, 9 different math classes, honors advanced. We're in early college.
Right.
So
they're getting college credit. This is a little bit more robust.
We have 32 different college classes we offer in a semester alone.
Right.
And when we get the plans that are like, well, here's your 9th grade schedule, English, math, science, and social studies, go do it. I'm like, not if then that spirals into all of the different classes that we offer. And you can only be in a cohort of 4. So like, you can only interact with so many teachers. And like, once you start boiling it down mathematically, you like ask any principal right now. If any principal tells you like, I have it all together, I think they've just cracked.
Right. They're done. They're
because
like, whatever it is,
just cracked.
It's over.
It was
whatever.
We've been talking about are we at the point where we're having a breakdown or a breakthrough? If they say they got this thing all worked out, that's a breakdown.
That's a breakdown. Be clear.
They're
it's a
gone.
breakdown.
Yeah.
And so now that we got the information to go all remote, but for 2 weeks, and then there's this big asterisk of like, come on, y'all, we're never going back. When we are asked as leaders to create 3 plans, like create a remote learning plan, create a remote learning plan, or then create a hybrid plan, and then create an in-person plan. At the end of the day, what my biggest problem is we are not planning for kids. We're doing like math problems to try to figure out how we even do it. And then you throw in the staff that require accommodations and who can't be in person or can only do remote.
Right.
And then you plan in the needs of, who makes up, 35% of our district English language learners. Mm-hmm. And then you throw in the needs of how many students are on IEPs.
Right.
And then you throw in the directive of synchronous math and synchronous English education every single day. Then my grease board, if I could like scribble all around it, like what are you asking us to do?
Exactly.
And what you're asking us to do as like a sub question is like right now we're not actively planning like the best plan that we can do for kids.
Absolutely.
And so, again, it goes back to, like, let's just not complain about, remote person or in-person learning. Like, ask your school principal, like, can we even do this, like, mathematically? Not to mention in a global pandemic, not to mention meeting the needs of all of our children, not to mention when this summer has been so violent on our kids and on our school communities.
Absolutely.
On our entire communities. Like, it's just like, it feels like I've cracked.
It's a lot, and I fear that when you have a foundation, something that's strong, because you're not an independent school, you have a whole district behind you that isn't giving guidance, and that for me doesn't hold true to what a district should be doing. And like you said, this has been a year of violence. How much support have the students received as they're losing classmates left and right? What does that support look like for our students?
Wow.
One, I want to be able to bring Tavion Washington to this place with us right now. And I want to just tell his family how much we love them. And I want to tell Miss May how much we love her and all the boys at the home. And like, it hits real. It's always real. Mm-hmm. And then it hits real when you lose one of your seniors who you have just graduated. And when you lose the type of kid who was all of you. And he was the type of kid that it took all of us in community so that we knew we could get him there.
Yeah.
And get him there in a way where he felt empowered on his next steps, and then to lose him to violence impacts every single one of us.
Absolutely.
And so we opened up our building just to socially distance and to grieve with our kids. And it was really interesting. Shannon was there. Our kids are... our kids are swimming in this like intersectionality of everything, right?
Yeah.
COVID's happened to them. Violence has happened to them. Then they're teenagers, right? And so like we've taken school from them. And we keep taking school from them. And we keep taking their school community away from them. And then they're stuck at home with their parents.
That's real.
For a long time. Like it'll be 5 months that they've been at home with their parents. I'm parents. I'm very sorry. I know you love them, but like on the day that our kids came to school, some parents, it was like to see the parents, they like, open up the door and the kid would get out and the family was literally like,
right, out of there.
Running errands, like, we're free, like music cranked, windows down. Right. So our teenagers, like, they're feeling, like, our kids are feeling a lot right now.
Absolutely.
A lot.
Absolutely.
And, they're teenagers, so you never really know what they're feeling.
Right.
But they do need us. And so now, as school leaders, like, we have this, like, how are we going to support them authentically, virtually? How do you build community authentically, virtually? Like I don't know. These are like exponential questions right now. Do you have answers to them? Would you like to share?
I don't have answers to them. I know that people like you, we need to see more people like you that care in another position. And like you said, when we're planning about our students and planning around our students, let's actually include our students and remember that it's about our students.
Wow.
And that I think has been lost a lot. And so when I have people like you, it's a breath of fresh air because the biggest part that you're bringing is our students. And somehow they get missed out in the fight. And we're planning all these things that have everything to do with them, and I don't feel like their needs are at the top of that list.
Well, here's my last little ditty, okay? and then go to brotherjeff.com, make a donation of any amount. We're powered by the people. We certainly thank everyone who continues to do that. We'll be doing our Friday dinner tonight, asking if you know where your children are, who they're with, etc., and creating the space for families to gather if in fact that's what you need tonight. Here's my ditty, Stacy. And I want to talk about $33 million real quick.
Okay.
And I want to and when we talk about the kids and we talk about the politics of education at the expense of the kids and the families and all of the adults dealing with the politics and the this and the that, while our children are dying in the streets or experiencing trauma and all these different things, $33 million was on the table for DPS. $33 million. Now, it could be very complicated in how that $33 million got to the table, but it was on the table. Councilman Cashman says, if I had a check for $33 million to give DPS right now, there would be no one here to accept the check. In other words, at the city council meeting, no one from the staff, the board, the union showed up to advocate for $33 million that could have gone parts of it into your school and to your work, and etc. How are we going to get these dollars and the resources into the classroom when we can't walk across the street? Our leadership can't walk across the street to at least throw their hat in the ring to have a discussion about $33 million. Even if you couldn't have got it all, you could say, well, just give us $33. Give us $3 million. Give us $9. Give us something. Yeah. But to talk about all of these problems we're having right now and to not show up and even advocate for the resources that could be available, how does that land with you as a principal, knowing that you've had to wrestle deficits and lay off folks and take heat for this and that? What are your thoughts about this $33 million, or am I just making much ado about nothing?
What was the, how come that our board member didn't come?
I haven't heard of how come.
Have we heard that yet?
See, now you're taking me another level down. They came together and wrote a joint effort that said, don't blame Angela Cobian. But I'm like, we're not talking about Angela Cobian. We're talking about $33 million.
Right.
So if you could come together and rally behind one of your colleagues, how much more powerful would it have been if you came together and rallied behind $33 million in a fight for teachers and classrooms and things like that? So when you say what is the why, it's a deflection. It's not Angela's fault. It's like, we don't care whose fault it is.
Right.
You could have sent the janitor to the city council meeting to pick up the check if everybody was busy. Mm-hmm. Cashman said no one showed up, even if we had the check, to accept the check.
Right.
So, I mean, something has to be done with the system, or I am going to crack.
He's going to crack. He's serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've said the only way forward is just to burn it all down. So
that's taking them to burn it down. No, I'm with you.
Metaphorically,
guys,
we're already under resourced, underfunded. Metaphorically,
everybody. We don't know why they didn't show up, but I think it's a problem, and I think when we're looking at the resources that would have brought to our students,
or could have brought, just show up to the fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Just show up and say, give us a portion. So we can resource parts of our structure. We can fix the 16th Street Mall, and we can help with DPS. At least let's come to an agreement about this. But when you don't show up to the fight, everything else is suspect to me. When you talk about how you want to fight for changes, how you want to, have this North Star and all of those different things, and that's just another example that left a bad taste in your brother's mouth.
Can I raise my hand?
Please.
You're on.
Can I invite some more people to this fight right now?
Absolutely.
I'm going to get on a soapbox for a second. It's a free think zone.
It's a free think zone. Power by the people.
I'm not used to the
I
free
love
think
it. No,
zone.
you're free. Go ahead. Here.
If this is we talked about not just getting excited or emotional, but what does it look like?
Yeah.
So, for example, if the state of Colorado, just funded students on the nationwide average, right?
Okay.
The national average of how you fund per pupil funding. If we were just funded on the average, right?
What is that average right now?
Can you Google? I haven't Googled the average. I've only Googled I've Googled the average, but in the math. I'm sorry.
While I talk about it,
is that beneath you
I like
to
that.
Google for me? I'm sorry. Let's focus. Let's bring this back on track. If we were just funded at the per pupil average, then in my school-based budget alone, it would equal out to about $1.3 million extra dollars.
Wow.
I could use for my school a year. If we just funded on the national average, because Colorado, we are near the bottom. We're below Arkansas.
How?
We are low.
All this money in Colorado, that doesn't even...
So all this money, that's a whole other conversation where all this money is coming from in Colorado. But if we just funded on the per pupil average, which Shannon Hoffman is pulling up, then in my little old school budget alone, it would be $1.3 million extra dollars. Do you know what I could do with $1.3 million extra dollars? I could hire a social worker. Many social workers, many teachers, many electives. I could even start putting money aside to invest in my capital, to make capital improvements to my school, to build welding in my school, right?
Or
we
get
could
a
go
better
there.
kitchen, because I know the student has complained to me about the kitchen in the school.
I think the average is about $11,762.
I never see that much money per pupil.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Total per pupil spending.
Yeah.
So we're at 9,500, and Arkansas, to your point, is 9,800.
Hold on. Say that one more time.
What I'm looking at is that the national total per pupil spending is $11,762. And Colorado total per pupil spending is $9,575. And to Stacy's point that we're below Arkansas, Arkansas is $9,846. Alaska is $17,510 total per pupil spending.
Wow.
So given those, just what you said, and I don't know what website you're on, it would be, I will correct myself here, it'll still be $849,000 extra dollars at my school side alone.
Yeah. That's a lot.
And so when I say, like, you know, where are the people, like when we put something in front of you, you know, voters of Colorado, to change how we fund education or to overhaul Tabor in our state, we don't need one of those existential conversations about, like, education.
Yeah.
We just need you to fund it and then trust us and empower us to do the work. Mm-hmm. Because the way we fund education in the state of Colorado is just, like, deplorable. Like, people need to quit quoting that we have one of the richest economies in the state when we do not invest in education.
To our students.
You know, Shannon, you're going to have to say that again because they say they couldn't hear you. So you're going to have to take off your mask, and I'll bring the mic over to you and use your teacher voice. But hold on just a second because, you know, Stacy, I had a conversation with Senator Regis Groff, rest in peace, many years ago. And he said to me directly so long ago that Colorado never invested in education, even when the times were booming. And so when you have these recessions and they claim, well, we're having a poor economy, DPS or the state has never invested in education. In fact, what they have done when they say that we have the highest number of graduates and, you know, postdoctorate work, advanced learners, etc., those individuals are imported from other cities. Mm-hmm. They are not indigenous from Colorado. So, yes, you do have a lot of folks that have excelled in degrees, but they didn't receive them here. Mm-hmm. And so when they run that line about, well, Tabor, well, economy, let them know that, well, when you were booming and when you're always booming, you're still at the bottom as it relates to funding education.
This is why we have to be at these education tables. Look at you.
Sorry, I thought I hit a button. Okay, so it says the most recent data indicates $11,762 is spent on public education per student. So then Colorado's total per pupil spending is $9,575 comparatively to, like, another state like Arkansas, $9,846, or just to say states that are around there, something like California is $11,495. Is, Stacey, is what you're getting at, like, the fair tax Colorado?
I'm getting at all of it. Because, like, we can't just put this on DPS and be like, they don't fund education. They can't fund education because our state does not fund education. So, with that, I did the math again using exacts. So, it would be $1,237,842 more dollars
in your school alone.
To my school
budget
budget
alone. One
alone.
school right now. And that could change a school. That could absolutely change a school. So when we're talking about fighting for the $33 million, if we just did the state representation as a state, if we represent it right, and we cared about education, how much further will our students be serviced, and how many more resources will our students be allocated?
It doesn't just change the trajectory of our school. That can change the trajectory of entire communities.
Absolutely.
And entire generations.
Yeah.
So, like, we have to, you know, we can be critical of DPS, but, like, they get the bank account from the state.
Right.
Like, we have to fund it in the state, period. So, like,
Stacey, you've dropped so many jewels today. There's so many things I could have this conversation with you for hours. I know we're wrapping up. What is your last message to the parents at home that are afraid to send their students back, that don't know what decision to make, to the people that are sitting, that are on the boards at DPS, to the white leaders that are out there, to the indigenous leaders, to the black leaders? What is your final thoughts?
Burn it down.
I smell hints of ridicule and sarcasm.
Just burn it down. Burn it down.
No, Joe's singing a song.
when the dust settles in August, all families and all staff have to make the decision that is best for their own health and safety, period. And just know that we will do the best we can for you, and we'll do even better when you join us in that fight. Like my school community, you are freely joined. Like, join our collaborative school committee, question everything, and advocate for the needs of your student, and tell us exactly what you need, and join us as we try to figure it out in August.
Wow.
Brother Jeff, you have any last words?
Nope. Get involved.
Get
like,
involved.
no, that's what Stacy's saying.
Yeah.
You are co-partners and, the center of your child's education, your household, and your community. And you cannot expect those to work from the outside towards you. Mm-hmm. It has to come from the inside out. And so with that being said, powerful conversation. Again, the types of leadership that DPS tends to root out and weed out. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of brilliant talent within DPS, but they have the tall poppy syndrome, which means keep your head down, keep grinding, keep doing what you can with what you have, because the minute you stick your head up, it gets chopped off. We're not going to allow that to happen to any more of our leaders, because we want a powerful school district, a powerful student body where all children are excelling and leading and are going to be valuable citizens and I'm talking about global citizens. Yes. And so with that being said, it's great hanging out with you. We'll see you 1,000 more times.
We will, absolutely.
JJ, tell them about Chubby Curls. Get them 7 donations and give Stacy some people's pickles.
I have to shout out, first of all, Chubby Curls, educating our natural hair one scalp at a time. If you have those skinny curls, make them chubby. Make sure you are supporting local independent distributors and black distributors all around. And we keep it fresh with the people's pickles. And Stacy, I'm going to give you one of these jars. I'm going to bless you one of these, because if you haven't had the people's pickles, I know you let your students sell them. So thank you for letting us do our thing within your school. So when I'm talking about Stacy's empowering our students beyond the things that you can see, she's also making sure that they're hooked up with economics and really finding people that they can partner with for mentorship. So shout out to the People's Pickles. Go to thepeoplespickles.com and go ahead and grab you some pickles. My favorite are the sweet hot. Remember, when we're talking about education, this is not just a Stacy thing. This is not a Brother Jeff thing. This is not just a DPS thing. This is a community thing. And it's going to take each and every one of us to be in this fight. Like Malcolm X said, education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. Let's prepare for the best future for our students. Let's make sure we're doing the work together as a community. It is officially 3:20. Do you know where your students are at? Right. We're asking you to make sure you know where they're at, and make sure you keep independent media alive. Go to brotherjeff.com right now. Give any amount of donation to keep these conversations powered by the people. Up next is my guy, John Bowman. Make sure you stay tuned to the Free Think Zone. It's a fabulous Friday, and we're just blessed to be alive. Remember, community, if you go down swinging. You might score a knockout. Rumble on, community. Rumble on. It's your girl, Shay J. Peace and love.
Love it. Woo. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for